Još malo tu ovako. Ja ću da
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for coming to our panel on disinformation against the State of Israel. Due to new or even not new geopolitical circumstances, it is necessary to speak clearly, uncompromisingly, and with arguments about the actors and policies that undermine the existence of liberal democracies and our transatlantic partnership, where we also see the State of Israel. First of all, I would like to give the floor to Mr. Igor Šlosar, our president.
Thank you all. Our guests, familiar faces, our panelists, Ambassador Koren, Your Excellency, Ambassador Hovorka, Your Excellency, welcome. Welcome to this panel organized by the CEA, Center for Public Policy and Economic Analysis. I promised my colleagues I'll be very brief so we can focus on things our panelists have to say. I'll just give you a brief overview of who we are. So for the last 10 years, actually over 10 years now, Center for Public Policy has been, I would like to say, a unique think tank in Croatia, spreading the idea of transatlantic values, values of European Union and common West in Croatia. I would like to say that, and this is the reason why we are here today, is part of our Detector project. So a project we started about 3 years ago, focusing on disinformation and misinformation campaign originating from states which are authoritarian, which are illiberal, and states who seek to undermine common values that we built this Western civilization on. In those states, I count North Korea, China, Russia, and Iran. As part of today's panel here, we will explore the disinformation and misinformation campaign and the false narratives that we have seen coming out of 15-month conflict between Israel and Hamas. I would like to point out that for the CEA and the rest of the world, Israel is truly a beacon of hope, of prosperity, of democracy in that part of the world, and the CEA supports Israel in its activities, and we hope that following the recent developments, we'll see a bit of a long-term solution. Let's see what's going to happen following the truce that's been agreed over the last 48 hours. I hope that after the panel you'll have questions. We'll be happy to answer them. Our panelists are, as you all know them, are well versed in the topic, and I'm looking forward to the discussion today. Thank you.
Thank you, Igor. The topic of today's forum is the war against Israel. We will focus on the information warfare against the State of Israel, which is in a position to defend itself against barbaric and extremist enemies, pro-Iranian proxies, and so on. After the brutal terror attack on Israel on October 7th by the terrorist group Hamas, Israel found itself in a war that lasted for more than a year. In the West, the war caused an avalanche of protests in support of so-called Palestine cause and the relativization of the terrorist attack, including an outburst of anti-Semitism never seen since World War II. In this panel, we will discuss disinformation narratives against the State of Israel, their origin and actors, and bearers of these ideas, and the geopolitical risks and implications. First of all, we will reflect on how the violent actions of the extreme left, postmodern neo-Marxists, and their social networks, media, and academia are destroying the foundations of Western Judeo-Christian civilization and the Enlightenment tradition. So I have a great honor to announce participants of this forum. With me is His Excellency Gary Koren, Ambassador of the State of Israel to the Republic of Croatia. Also, here is Associate Professor Boris Havel. He teaches courses on Israeli-Arab relations at the Faculty of Political Science. He is an expert on the Middle East and is particularly familiar with the internal and external political situation in the State of Israel. The next participant in the panel discussion is Bruno Šagi. He is a member of the Center for Public Policy and Economic Analysis, CEA. He is a historian by profession and deals with the political, social, and diplomatic history of the 20th century. Like Professor Havel, Šagi is informed about developments in the academic community regarding the reception of the narrative about the situation in the Middle East. Also here with us is the historian and Jewish studies scholar Naida-Michal Brandl from the Faculty of Humanities and Social Sciences in Zagreb. She will speak about the current situation in academia regarding anti-Semitism. My name is Adrijan Štivić. I'm the member of the CEA board, where I cover the areas of culture, science, and higher education. I'm a historian and comparative literature scholar by profession, and I deal with intellectual history and history of science. With that said, I would like, first of all, to invite Ambassador Koren to make an introductory address and say a few words from the perspective of professional diplomat. We are interested in how you experienced the entire situation surrounding the Hamas attack and the ongoing war, hostage taking, and so on. And how do you view this shocking growth of anti-Semitism and the newly expressed political constellation? I remember that you told me about the red-green coalition, so alliance of the extreme left and radical Islamism. Your Excellency, here's the microphone.
Thank you.
Yes.
Can you hear me? You need this, actually?
Yes, for the tape.
For the tape. Okay, so for the tape. Thank you very much, all of you who came here. I think I know some of you. I'm thankful to the rector of Catholic University. I'm thankful to my colleague, Ambassador of the Czech Republic, one of the diplomats from Czech Republic, everyone, I think, and of course the panelists. I would like to thank the host that initiated this idea. We had a brief meeting and discussed what's happening and what can be done. Well, I will not repeat here now what happened on 7th of October. More than 15 months passed since that. I think the event that took place yesterday brings some hope. We got back 3 young ladies. There is a fragile ceasefire. No one should be, naive. I've seen some headlines speaking about beginning of peace process. Forget it. Maybe it's lack of knowledge. I hope it's just lack of knowledge. There cannot be peace between Israel and Islamist jihadi organization that called for destruction of Jewish state. Last week, I thought to start with something which basically reflects from scientific point of view. Well, I'm not sure if it's scientific, but it came as observation from Croatian prominent scientists, and we attended an event hosted by Czech Foreign Ministry, an event that was dedicated to the 33rd year of recognition of Croatia. And the guest of honor was a famous Croatian scientist, Igor Rudan. It was interesting, from many point of view, for us, non-scientists, diplomats, whoever attended, I think it was an interesting lecture. He's very fluent and convincing speaker. Actually, the last point of the discussion that he touched, and the topic of his lecture was called The Value of Information. We are dealing with value information, or we are dealing with disinformation, and we are dealing with situation. It's not, exact science when you have to prove some mathematical formula or theory. That the truth, it's in the eye of the public. And the public makes decisions, not only on elections, fresh example, but also on other matters, basically on information that, sorry to say it, sometimes is fed. We are living in age of information that is pushed to us. We consume this information, reading the classical media, trusting reporters, journalists, media, information agencies, big shots, big names, New York Times, Washington Post, Euronews, whatever, local media, but growing number of us, especially young people, consume information from social media, okay? I also consume information from social media. I want to know who tweets what, who posts something, friends, rivals, enemies. Not me personally, but some people do it. That's I think it's something that we should realize, because I think Rudan and many other scientists, and actually one of the last statements of President Biden a week ago was also warning against a new actor, much more dangerous, and this is artificial intelligence. So I'm starting with being a little bit pessimist. This is the reality that not only State of Israel facing, but many other countries, West, as a collective West, as a Western values, civilizational values, is basically facing the same type, different motivations, different ingredients from different actors. Okay, that's first observation. And please keep the time and cut me because I can speak long. The second observation, if you want to understand what happened or what is happening, it's we need some kind of roadmap, okay, trying to understand who is dealing with that, who are the actors, okay, how they act, what they do, and what can be done to confront, not to defeat. There is one built-in problem, numerical. It's about numbers. Social media, the algorithms of social media are very much built on numbers, okay? And Israel, as mighty as it is, from military point of view, intelligence, economy, science, has to deal with the global public opinion, which has some ingredients, which I'll mention shortly because I'm sure that you are aware. I'm not going directly speak about Croatia, by the way. I'm ambassador, working here as a diplomat. I know who are, let's say, the troublemakers. I'm leaving to you to think what can be done. We have our complaints. We deal with the foreign ministry, prime minister's office, sometimes police, sometimes so on. So let's start with why, because this is number one question. Why it's happening? So I'm sure that you heard about anti-Zionism. Now, what's anti-Zionism? You have to define it a little bit to yourself. Jewish people, speaking about modern times, every nation supposed to have the right for self-determination, okay? You have to ask yourself, we will not do its academic lesson here, if really all the nations that exist, even in the Western world, were able, okay, in some even European countries, to get self-determination. Some of them are still struggling. Again, I'm not going to mention. But for the Jewish people, since the destruction of the Second Temple, the idea of coming back to their homeland, and here we have two theologians, let's say experts on Bible, who can confirm it also from Christian point of view, how much Jews were praying on a daily basis on Jerusalem and for coming back. And in one of my lectures, I mentioned also the famous band who was singing on the rivers of Babylon. Okay, what was Bonnier? Yeah. So it's not obvious because there are circles, there are people who strongly believe that Jews don't deserve this. Okay, this is anti-Zionism. Or they can deserve it in very, let's say, limited formula. Okay, like Iran sometimes on record say, "Oh, we don't mind for one-state solution." One-state solution. What kind of state? Ruled by Sharia. We have nothing against Sharia, but it means the Jews will become, historically speaking, a minority, not just minority, but abused minority, to say the least. Some support statements made by Hamas. Israel have no right to exist. Israel is a colonial creation. So it's people in the West who strongly believe, mostly on the left side, that we should, as a Western civilization, you should, to repent for colonialism. Yeah, colonialism created a lot of bad things. But forget about the Jews being a nation that was born as a nation in what Christians call the Holy Land. So this is anti-Zionism, and then along it there is a traditional anti-Semitism in different ideological variations. It exists in the radical right, radical left, and of course there is also Islamic anti-Semitism, because the great book of the Quran can be interpreted by many ways, and those that don't like us, including on the media, including disinformation campaigns, pick what they want, that to call to persecute the Jews, even when they hide behind the stone or behind the tree or whatever. And the whole ideas of jihad are existing. So this is why. But here, probably, you should try to understand what's wrong with the European left. Not all the European left. We have our left, we have peace-loving people in Israel, what we used to call a peace camp. I'm saying this unfortunately, because the numbers of the 7th of October dropped dramatically. Okay, we still have intellectuals. I wish there was some people on the Palestinian side of this caliber, famous writers and so on. Who? Maybe I'll stop after who, because I have something for the second part. It's about how and what can be done. So we have the radicals on the Palestinian side and the immediate suspects that don't need a proof. It's Hamas and Palestinian Islamic Jihad. Whoever on the Palestinian side basically doesn't recognize the right for existence. It's not about the borders. It's not about 67, not about 48. No place for a Jewish state. Sometimes the most moderate among them will tell, okay, Jews can stay, especially Jews from Arab countries. European Jews should leave. Leave where? To Auschwitz? Behind them, you will find Iran and its Shia proxies, Houthis and Hezbollah. And then, of course, they are less relevant now, but they still exist. ISIS is still alive and kicking in some parts of Syria. And believe me, we still don't know about the rulers of Syria. Europe, naively, that's our position, runs to speak with them. We understand the political interest, strategic interest to ensure stabilization, to prevent another migration. to bring back the refugees or the migrants who fled to Europe. But don't be fooled. Those are hardcore Islamists. The leaders of this organization until day before were part of ISIS, Al-Qaeda, Al-Nusra. Those people don't change their state of mind. I'll be really surprised if suddenly they will say, okay, we want to live with peace with the Jews, with Israel. We welcome Jewish diaspora to come back to help us to rebuild Damascus. There used to be some 25,000 Jews before the Second World War in Syria, maybe even more. Palestinian Authority, it's not an enemy, but it wages a political and legal and information warfare against Israel. So they're against the terrorism, okay? They're for political uprising, but they're mostly involved in the same objective, okay? I'll explain later. Then we have political rivals, member states of UN. Some of them belong to non-aligned movement, ex-friends of Yugoslavia, of Tito. You can find them easily. Cuba, Venezuela, South Africa, Nicaragua, and others. Colombia, some today also. OIC, again, not automatically every organization of Islamic countries is against Israel. We have good relations with the countries of the Gulf. Okay. Abrahamic Accords, as you understand. And some significant number of the Arab League. By the way, this ensures automatic majority in UN. Okay. So UN, that's the reason we have so many resolutions against Israel from those democratic countries. UN is abused also by special rapporteurs mechanism. We have a very strong case of Francesca Albanese. She is Italian, but she is a virulent anti-Semite, and she is special rapporteur in Palestine in the Human Rights Council. Then we have the new wave, especially since 7th of October. It's the progressive Western left. It's mostly based on ideological justification. It's combination of respecting the suffering of Palestinians, which is fine, legitimate, human, and very strong opposition to existence of State of Israel. People who chant from the river to the sea, it means they're against Israel. People who call for global intifada, it means no place for a Jewish state. And this is students in most prominent Western universities, and some here as well. Luckily here they're a very small minority, but very vocal. One of the expressions of this anti-Israeli position, also in disinformation campaigns, it's BDS. BDS stands for boycott, divest, and sanctions on Israel. This is the coalition that you asked me to speak about. It's mostly red-green. Red stands for left, and green stands color of Islam. So it's Arab and Muslim students in Western universities, thousands of them, stipends by Qatar. Okay? A lot of exchange foreign students, mostly from Muslim countries, to most leading American. It's, there is nothing wrong in a sense to make good scientists in the best universities in the US, but those people are involved together with their American, Canadian, French, and other students in this coalition. They are very, very active on social network, and they make organizations, demonstrations, protests, walks, you name it. A little bit trickier, the information campaigns by state actors. Okay, I will not name. You can guess that manipulate the information space for totally different reasons. Mostly to create a rift in Western societies, in European Union, NATO, in US before elections, after elections. Okay? It can be traced in some cases, and it's easy to understand why. Okay? We are not the only ones who are saying that. It's actually, we know it's from our Western colleagues who's suffering from that. Israeli-Palestinian case is one of the easiest cases to manipulate because it falls on the ears of those young students. And because we live in an age that you cannot distinguish between the fake and the real truth, then some countries, yeah, I'm finishing in 2 minutes. Some countries do it, like always, for hardcore interests, including some of our friends, okay, in Europe. Because they have a lot to lose, commercial contracts, defense contracts with the Arab countries, so they give us a cold shoulder. This cold shoulder is sometimes statements by ministers, by leaders, by members of the European Parliament. We know to distinguish when it comes. It's easier for us, let's say, because we can deal with that. But it's still unpleasant, and it's part of the campaign. And the last one, and the so-called useful idiots, or self-righteous fools. Okay, people who would like to be very, peaceful, speaking about peace and living in brotherhood and everything, and don't bother them with facts. They will never criticize Hamas. They will never call them terrorists. They will never call them jihadists. They will call them freedom fighters. Yeah, I stop here. I think it's enough material for thought or for questions. Please.
Thank you, Your Excellency, for your insights. We will continue on this topic with Professor Havel. In one of our CEA articles, we analyzed the Hamas Charter from 1988. It is, to remind the public, full of anti-Western propaganda, misogynistic tropes, anti-Semitism, and so on. So, as a political scientist, can you briefly describe the ideological foundations of Hamas, Hezbollah, and other groups? What are their similarities in the ideological standpoint, and also why do we call Israel the only democracy in Middle East, and why is it more prosperous, open society than other?
Thank you very much. Great question. So we'll be here until 9.
Because of me.
Well, because of me. Watch me now. Now, guys, about 10 years ago, I had one of the most enlightening conversations in my life. It was at the residency of Israeli ambassadors, but 2 ambassadors ago. Visiting.
They were much better.
No, come on. You are improving. You know what I'm talking about. Your ministry is improving. And one of the most famous writers in Israel was here. And I wanted to meet and to discuss, because he's a very famous pro-peace activist. He's very famous now. After Amos Oz died, he's the most famous in Israel. Pro-peace activist, and it was interesting for me to hear how somebody who is so much pro-peace thinks, and he wanted to hear how somebody who is Croatian and not Jew at all can have such strong opinions and support for Israel. So we spent about, 45 minutes talking, but most talking he did. I wanted to listen and I wanted to learn. Of course, it was a great honor for me to listen and sit with him. Now, he was explaining to me how bad Israel is treating the Palestinians and what all the faults Israel has done throughout all these decades, and why the Palestinians, primarily in Gaza, are so freaking angry. Now, again, I listened with much respect. He has experience. He knows things. Unfortunately, also his son died in one of Israel's wars. But after he explained to me all the faults of the state of Israel, which, by the way, I am aware of. I know that my perception in Croatian public is that I am very one-sided, but I'm not. I can criticize Israel, and I know, and I sometimes do it. But then, after he finished his share of criticism of Israel, and showing very much understanding for the Hamas, I just asked him an unplanned question. I asked, Mr., did you read the charter of Hamas? Imagine my surprise when he said no. And I was like, I went from that place very concerned, because if Israelis who have their skin in the game do not read the theory of their most dangerous and sinister foe, who does it? If you live there side by side with something that is endangering your life, your family, your neighborhood, your community, and your country, and you do not pay attention to what they say, but you do pay attention to the wrongs that you do, which is, by the way, quite a Jewish thing to do. I mean, we are not that self-critical. You know that allegedly joke when somebody says, I think Jewish, they said, Jews, they said, we introduced self-criticism and the Catholics perfected it. but we are still not that kind of Catholics here. Now, this Jewish self-criticism was amazing to me, based on not based on self-awareness and awareness of things we do wrong, but why don't you know who the other side really is? Now, this is something that ever since I took as a priority to talk about when I meet with people who do not know much about these issues, especially my students who meet Israel and Palestinians for the first time. I point to a basic rule of scholarship, and it is to study sources, not to study social media or media in general, but sources. And when it comes to sources, something that you cannot get away from is the Charter of Hamas. Now, that's a very short text. And the good thing about it is that it is honest. Like, 50, 60, 70, 100 years ago, if you were in the West and you had an enemy, you had to send spies to know what he thinks. Today, you just Google it. They publish it themselves. Hamas did it. Muslim Brotherhood did it. And also Islamic State. And Al-Qaeda did it. So my question is, when it comes to scholarship primarily, but then also to journalists, to those who work in security services, are you reading it? And if you are not, why not? Now, the Charter of Hamas will tell you everything you need to know about that movement. Of course, I will not now retell the story. I will, from the bottom of my heart, try to convince you to, when you go home today or tomorrow, open it up and read it. Now, the next thing of a scholarly thinking is, once you read somebody's theory, and of course you want to know, is it true? Is it correct? Like, maybe they are faking it. When you read a theory of some movements, it's not really, I'm tempted to mention some of them, but I will resist the temptation. You want to check, is that theory corresponding to behavior, to reality? And if you compare the charter of Hamas with their political behavior, you will find that it corresponds almost perfectly. And it is enough that you need to know for it to study it and to even make other people, push other people to study it. Basically, what is it all about? Hamas is a branch of Muslim Brotherhood, and Muslim Brotherhood is an organization which was created in 1928 to re-establish caliphate, which was abolished 4 years earlier. And the idea is basically we should unite the Muslim world. We should expand through different methods. And we should restore the caliphate and then continue spreading. Now, the Muslim Brotherhood took this idea and made it even more radical, introduced the idea that you cannot achieve much through negotiations. Other branches of Muslim Brotherhood would negotiate first before they kill you. But Hamas says, no, there's no point in negotiating at all. Let's just start jihad directly. And basically what you can find in the charter of Hamas is the Palestinian issue cannot be solved by negotiations, by compromises. It can only be solved by jihad. Now, to students and to any intellectual and any scholar who want to study modern Middle East, there is no other way but to go into this quite simple theory and to basically try to see what is this telling me about what is happening today in front of my eyes. We know also from theory and behavior that Israel is by no means a perfect state. There is no perfect state. There is no perfect society. That never will be. But when you have a democratic state with all its flaws, and you have a sinister, brutal, murderous, terrorist organization, and people choose the second, that is a really, really sign for alert in a society, in a university, in church, mosque, wherever it is. And so basically, instead of answering in a long run your question, I want to emphasize this: read the theory. Basically, there is no movement which is lasting that has no theory. If it is lasting and if it has structure, it is not spontaneous. It has a theory. Study that theory. The more you know about the theory of Hamas, the clearer it will be for you what is going on right now. Thank you.
So especially the students among them.
Thank you, Professor Havel. It's very interesting that you mentioned the students. So the next question for you would be, what would you say, which social groups, which type of students support Palestine cause, they are aggressive on campuses and so on? I am asking you this because, of course, Croatian specific case is that there is a significant portion of non-aligned movement legacy and ideological backgrounds of it, but also in a global scale, and this is the slow introduction to what Professor Brandl will say, the Edward Said theory of Orientalism. I'm a comparative literature scholar, by profession, and Said's book was obligatory literature, so yes, we had to read it.
Thank you. Well, Said's book Orientalism was translated into Croatian in 1994 by Soros Foundation. So, I mean, it tells you a lot about the book. But it's very interesting because of Edward Said, the study...
It's taught in Israel as well. We are open to...
I know, yeah, I mean, Israel... I learned about Edward Said in Israel. So, well, what did he do? He basically taught Europe in the West that it's illegitimate for you and me as Christians and Jews to study Islam. Why? Because our motive is wrong. What could be our motive? Number one, we could be Zionists. Number two, we could be colonialists. And number three, we could be Christian missionaries. I mean, I can be blamed for everything. So basically, because of it, the knowledge about Islam and the processes within the Islamic society, history of Islam, which is great, which is very interesting, is lacking in the West. Now, what do the students do when it comes to support of Palestine today? Instead of knowing some theory, like I said, no theory of Hamas, no theory of Israel, and then compare and see where would you rather live. Instead of studying theory and comparing it like students should do, and like students do actually at the Faculty of Political Science, I have to say we have a generation of students which I can only commend and say the best, and some of them are actually here. Now, instead of doing that, many students in the West, and I'm talking about famous universities in the United States primarily, but I've seen some things here in Sweden too, and maybe some other universities, some other faculties in Zagreb, not where I teach, is that students actually base their position on somebody's emotional experience. A few days ago, I had a panel like this at my university, and then a few students who were pro-Palestinian, they did not ask me about political science theories and ideologies and processes. They shared with me and everybody else personal experiences of some Palestinians who were mistreated by Israel. And I'm sure that Israel is mistreating many Palestinians badly. And so it ended the discussion. So what did I do to even be able to talk with them on that level? Well, I shared another experience that I have from Israel, which is, from the Israeli side. But I had bad conscience after this. I felt, like this is not how we should be studying. Basically, experiences which are loaded with emotions and manipulative need to be replaced by serious scholarship. And that serious scholarship can be revived now, even though Edward Said said it is illegitimate. I think the time is now ripe to re-legitimize it again. And just before I finish, I have to say that actually there is a great scholar who published, who is Bosnian Muslim, who published the same theory like Edward Said 4 years earlier at Al-Azhar University in Cairo, but in Arabic, so nobody knows about him, which is unfortunately still he's wrong.
Thank you. It's very interesting that you said something about the convergence of emotional standpoint to scientific literature. As I said in my introduction, I cover history of science. So as you reminded the public to go and Google Hamas Charter, I would also like to ask you to Google when you get home the term idea laundering. So nothing more to broaden the topic. Let us continue forward. Since we have touched the academic community, I would like to turn to Professor Brandl. We in CEA published the legal analysis of faculty behavior regarding political issues in the context of the growing idea of the doctrine of institutional neutrality in the United States. So what can you tell us broadly about the situation in Western academia regarding anti-Semitism? Not just the topic in the Holocaust studies, it will be the next question about it.
Okay, so I would go a little bit back to. Are you hearing me? Because this is a very good microphone.
Microphone is for the tape.
Okay, good. Because I don't hear the back sound.
Yeah.
So the question of anti-Semitism and what is anti-Semitism in general, and I would skip all these different definitions and would say that first it's the idea that changes through time. So whenever a certain way of anti-Semitism is current, it's always seen as positive, and people who define themselves as anti-Semite in the past, this was the badge of honor. To say in a time of racial anti-Semitism, modern anti-Semitism at the end of the 19th century and the beginning of 20th century, it was a badge of honor. So if we go back, we know that we had the pre-Christian ancient anti-Semitism that had its own canon. Then the Christian anti-Semitism or religious anti-Semitism, later on also the Muslim anti-Semitism, and then to go back to the modern or racial anti-Semitism, we had mayors like Mayor of Vienna in the change of century that used to lead the anti-Semitic party. So what we have now, and it's called anti-Zionism, it's actually just another name today to wear badge of anti-Semitic badge of honor. So what I do when I write anti-Semitism, I write it without hyphen. So there is no Semitism. Semitism doesn't exist. There are no Semite people. There are Semitic languages. So when I write anti-Zionism, I don't write it with hyphen. I write it as a word because it's actually today's anti-Semitism. If we talk clearly, as we said in the beginning, this is actually the anti-Semitism. And how did we come to it? We can start in a post-war period when we had already Nazis running away from Europe and coming mostly to Egypt, Syria, and Iraq, introducing also, for instance, in Syria, the special IDs with the Jewish sign on it. So something similar we saw in Nazi Germany. And then from 1960s, there is a Soviet Union entering the Middle East and politics in the Middle East, then bringing their own version of anti-Zionism, so actually anti-Semitism, merging these images. And if we analyze different caricatures from the German Reich and then from the Arab world from 1960s, they are the same. So the motives are the same, the ideas are the same, and if we think about the Soviets, what they had and what they also exported was also the protocols of the Elders of Zion. This came to exist in the Russian Empire. So it's something that is actually a longue durée, as we say. It's something that then comes to the Middle East, and it's also now embraced by the left in the world. And if we think about the Six-Day War that changed the picture of the Middle East, and the way the Soviets then, from 60s, from before the Six-Day War, tried to push their role into the Middle East, and also then if we think about 60s and the Vietnam War, and then the ideas that spread into the universities in the West, it's not hard to imagine that this now left-wing anti-Semitism actually entered the academia as well. After the Holocaust, it was not anymore to be anti-Semite. It couldn't be a badge of honor. And it's something that we see now, the right-wing anti-Semitism existing, but being pushed. People don't like to, they are in their, those that are anti-Semites on the right don't really say it publicly. And it's something that also the public is aware of, and they react on it. And this one is a new one. It's seen as progressive. It's progressive. It talks about the post-colonial world, and I'll talk more about the ideas in academia. One of them also being here already introduced as post-colonialism and post-colonial idea, and the Jews seen as the white settlers and white colonialists. Now, if we go back to what Boris said and the ambassador before that, and the facts, I mean, more than half of today's Israelis are actually descendants of people who were expelled from the region, from Arab states and Iran. But as we know, facts don't matter in these kind of ideas. And then, so we have Soviets, so we have Nazis coming in, also fighting in the war, Israeli war on independence on the other side. Some of them also from Croatia and Bosnia and Herzegovina, as we know. And now we also have United Nations that you mentioned, and in famous declaration, the UN General Assembly resolution from 1975 saying that Zionism is a form of racism. So here we see these double standards that everyone is entitled to have right of self-determination, but the Jewish right of self-determination is racism. So it's something also that shows these double standards. So this would be, let's say, a short history of this left-wing anti-Semitism that is then coming into both NGOs and the academia. And we know from 1960s and the revolution on universities, and then those that joined the revolution of 1960s in Europe, they became politicians. We know Joschka Fischer and many more. In the United States, they went into academia. So this actually is the beginning of it. And then if we go fast forward and we go to the role of the NGOs, and we need to introduce NGOs as well, because we'll see this today as a web of the actions of today's let's call it anti-Semitism. I don't like to push the word Zionism that I appreciate into this formula. So what we need to know is the Durban 2001. And the UN, the first World Conference, I'll read the whole name, on racism, racial discrimination, xenophobia, and related intolerance on one side. So it's official UN organization, and on the other side, the NGO fair, yes, that at the end grew up into and became this fair of anti-Semitism, the first one in the 21st century. So it ended actually, it's interesting, on 7th of September of 2001. So it's really just a few days before 9/11. And it's where this Israel actually was demonized by the NGOs, labeled as apartheid, racism, then judged for genocide and war crimes. The BDS was called, and so on. So this is 2001. We are now in 2024. So So in 2001, I went to New York on my MA in Jewish history, a little bit on 27th of August, 2001. And we already saw it, and we felt it in academia. We had a certain, I used to take courses at Columbia University as well, and we were warned on those professors that we were not supposed to take courses with if we didn't want to be molested. So it was something already, already you could feel it. It was in the air, exactly. So fast forward of today, and I'm sorry, I know that the Czech ambassador needed to go, but it's interesting that this Durban had more, they had more conferences, and the next one that was organized in 2009 was boycotted by some of the countries, including the Czech Republic. Croatia boycotted the one in 2021. So to go then fast forward on the situation of anti-Semitism today, and then I'm bad with numbers, so I will read it. From 2022 to 2024, the anti-Semitic incidents surged by 340%. And if we see the two worst cases in Europe, France for 350% and UK 450% in 2 years. The US 288 and Canada 562. So it's in 2 years. So what does it show us? That we of course haven't learned anything, that at the moment when the anti-Semitism of the current anti-Semitism is on, it's never recognized. It's seen actually as something positive and progressive, and our students at my faculty, we have this very active group, see themselves as self-righteous, and they are on the side of justice, and nobody understands what's going on. And then only in 10, 15 years, when we'll talk about, God forbid, some victims also, and we have them in the world already, we'll recognize it's anti-Semitism. So this is our problem. So when the racial anti-Semitism was on, we'll not talk about medieval and early modern, let's talk about modern period. It was okay to be anti-Semite. Actually, it was good. So today, they wear their badge of honor as anti-Zionists, and they're actually anti-Semites, and we cannot say it to their face or react sometimes as state politics until in 15 years we'll recognize what's going on, you know, looking from back, and we'll just think about how expensive this will be, and when I talk expensive, I talk about human lives. So, and then when we talk about the academic anti-Semitism, and I'll talk more about this in the second question, yes, there are several theories that the humanities use that helped give it and now I missed the word, it had legitimacy. And that's a critical race theory, that's a critical theory, that's a post-colonialism, and so on. But I think maybe it's better I leave it for then the second question.
Well, thank you. So I will ask you then the second question, and after that we will still be in the area of international relations, and I will give a word to Pastor Vatroslav Župančić, that is also here with us. But to conclude with Professor Brandl, so how does this growth in anti-Semitism influence the Holocaust studies? Are there any clashes, and what are those theories in humanities that you want to talk about?
Okay, so I do come from two complicated fields. It's Jewish studies and the Holocaust studies. And they are a little bit different as we usually, not everybody, but try to kind of focus on the positive side of the Jewish history and the process of building society between the expulsion after the Second Temple and the State of Israel, we have really rich, mostly intellectual history. On the other hand, there is a Holocaust studies. And on one side, both are affected by these different theories that I already mentioned. So it's first the critical theory, the post-colonial studies, the critical race theory. That's three main theories that entered humanities from 1960s, actually, from the civil rights movement and so on. Unfortunately, one of the consequences as after the civil rights movement, the Americans saw that there are still inequalities and so on, and they try to explain it in theory. That usually doesn't work, but only give birth to these kind of theoretical concepts that we see actually affects humanities today, taking away also the not the free speech, but we can also talk about being really uneasy as individuals, not accepting some of them, not accepting the academic theory on anti-Semitism that is known as Jerusalem a definition, for instance, because the most of the academics of the Jewish studies of those who accepted the Jerusalem definition, and it's not enough not to say anything, but you need to say something, or you are on the other side. You can feel that there is no academic freedom as it used to be anymore. Unfortunately, it's felt in the air. So this is one issue. The other issue is the crisis in humanities that are forcing different small disciplines to merge into the same departments or study programs, and these are the post-colonial studies, the gender studies with Jewish studies, and so on. And it brings interesting development, as if people coming then to Jewish studies wanted to, through these theories that they're kind of affected with, study Jewish history as well, as Jewish history is affected. Yeah, you can as a marginal oppressed group and so on, and if it doesn't fit, and in critical race theory it doesn't fit today because Jews are seen as white, you can see this really hard consequences of this situation. This is one thing, and the another thing is merging, or today it's normal. You don't even question the fact that the Holocaust studies are combined with genocide studies rather than with Jewish studies. Then the comparison between yesterday's genocides and today's genocide are okay, but God forbid to take modern anti-Semitism into it. You can only research the racial anti-Semitism. You cannot go into the contemporary with anti-Semitism. You can with genocide. So these are, I now just here push a lot of ideas to you, but these are all details that affect then the academic situation. So it's something that a group tried to focus on combining Jewish and Holocaust studies, because you cannot understand Holocaust without anti-Semitism, and then you can also be able to reflect on today, which you are actually not allowed at the moment. So these are this is the situation then we are facing at the moment.
Thank you. We will stay on the international level. We will go to Croatia's situation later. So we will stay on the international level, but to change the field. We talk about the field of academia, and now we will talk about the field of theology, religion, and similarities. So With us today is another guest. His name is Vatroslav Župančić. He is pastor of the Evangelical Methodist Church in Croatia. We asked him to join us because he recently organized an event with the International Christian Embassy in Jerusalem. So can you briefly tell us what did you do and what is International Christian Embassy in Jerusalem?
Thank you. Not to come just ex machina. Dear friends, I just wanted to introduce International Christian Embassy from Jerusalem, which was stated in the 80s when all other embassies were left Jerusalem, and from a Christian worldview, Christians wanted to stay in Jerusalem. So they built up the International Christian Embassy with branches in 90 countries in the world. So we have now branch in Croatia. So I'm representing the branch of International Christian Embassy, not now the church particularly. But I just wanted to say how the international things are reflecting on Croatian soil. I will not talk now much about presidential campaign in which many anti-Semitic prejudices were said, especially from the present president. There is still much to say about it. I will not talk about Iranian embassy, which organized an interreligious round table recently about the tolerance that is present in Iran, and we know what is the case in Iran on Israel, and especially also on Christians, because one of the most persecuted minorities in Iran are Christians today. I will talk about knife for potatoes. You know what a knife for potatoes is from a kitchen? It is maybe 5 or 7 centimeters long. And it is related with an accident which was on 16th of January in Split, where a scholar, a disciple came to school with such knife, and they closed the school, and the mayor of Split, Ivica Puljak, said, this we have to consider very seriously. Yes, we know what happened in last year, also in one school, but a potato knife, it's not really a big threat to security. And the police stated that with this knife you cannot do any harm. They didn't make any accusations toward this disciple. But Mr. Puljak has forgotten to say that it is a matter of very serious thing what happened between 18th and 19th of June in Split. Then on the Philosophy Facultet in Split came graffiti with anti-Israel and anti-Jewish statements from the river to the sea. Then liberation to Palestine and so on. It was also the call for the elimination of the state of Israel. We have also some embarrassing graffiti, this is really a new building of Philosophy Facultet in Split, beautiful new campus, and they sprayed it with somebody, police couldn't find who made it, they sprayed it with graffiti with F.A. Israel, Philosophy Facultet, shame on you, and other prejudices and propaganda that we heard from Colombia to other places. But one of the most embarrassing things was that they stated also the name of our, His Excellency Gary Koren, very badly. It was an honor, okay. How much of you? Yeah, okay. How much of you know what happened on June 18th to 19th? which television was there, which media was there. But where was the mayor then? We have no statement from the mayor from then on this very serious statements. Don't buy by Jews. Kauf nicht bei Juden. In other words, happened in Split, in our second largest city in European Union. Nobody knows about it. And where was the mayor? It is not surprisingly that he didn't say nothing, because his vice mayor said on social media, answered to one of our Jewish friends recently. I would read it in Croatian. It is maybe better. You will understand, and it's rude language. Da Bog da ti dica odrasla u Gazi, da ti mater. Od koga si ti bolji? Vi ste toliko bolji da ste državu dobili kmećenjem i lobiranjem. Za vas su Romi gospoda, Kurdi Božji narod s obzirom na karakter i borbu koju vode. Evo, radi ovoga imaju ljudi negativne emocije prema Židovima, iako i osobno poznajem poštenih i dobrih Židova, ali baš radi ovo, kao što je prosječni Hrvat seljačina i ustaša, tako je prosječni Židov umišljeni nacist. Šta više ovakvih komentara doživim, potpuno mi je jasno zašto se Hitler okomija baš na Židove. Slično sa sličnim ne može ništa nova. That was stated by a vice mayor of the second largest city in Croatia, Ivošević. So we know about it, and I don't know, we have here some ambassadors who was from Czechia and yeah.
Reception right now in the ministry that I decided to skip to be with you.
I would just ask, can somebody be a vice mayor who is stating such things in public in your country?
You mean in the Czech Republic?
Yes.
Well, of course, it's a sensitive political
Yeah,
issue, so
yeah.
I would say no.
But yes. But yeah, still we have such, from one side, vice mayor who is stating something like this, but from other side, the silence from the mayor is telling us much.
Is he still the vice mayor?
Yeah. Yes, still, yes. Dietrich Bonhoeffer, you have now his movie about him in the cinemas. He said, not to do nothing is to say something, to give a statement. So this is a hard statement, a hard silence from Puljak. And in civilized and democratic world that we are living in, and where the Jewish presence was before the presence of Croats. We talk about Salona, 2,000 years of Jewish presence, and then a mayor is stating something like this. I think it is something to do, not from the political side only, but I'm calling also, as a Christian, that from a Christian perspective, we have to raise our voices against it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I'm glad that you mentioned the situation in Split and on Split's faculty. So let us turn to Croatian universities and to the statements from the authorities. Are there any? In fact, our last speaker is Bruno Šagi. The two of us wrote an analysis that analyzed the anti-Semitic activities on Croatian universities. So, Mr. Šagi, what does the pro-Palestinian youth movement in Croatia looks like? Are there any activities at universities? And what kind of disinformation have pro-Palestinian protesters been spreading?
Hello, everyone. Well, in general, pro-Palestinian youth movement or youth movements in Croatia are closely related to different organizations of civil society, mostly organizations which are considered to be related on issues such as green politics or human rights or anti-fascism. So it usually has the ideological background. But there is also one initiative calling for Free Palestine, so most of events or protests which are covering this topic and pro-Palestine political interpretation are covered by that group of people inside the initiative, very active on social media, called Initiative for Free Palestine Croatia. Now, it is important to say that young people in general shape their opinion because of different factors. They can be categorized in few different groups. For example, there are young people that learn about this topic on social media like TikTok. Some of young people are following influencers or organizations who are promoting pro-Palestine approach. Some young people read pro-Palestine literature and texts, and some young people are affected by their teachers because some teachers are pro-Palestine or anti-Israel. Also, politicians in Croatian society played a big role because people are listening them. Colleague mentioned the vice mayor of the city of Split, but also in Croatia we have a Green Party, Možemo, which is openly pro-Palestine in this global situation, and also colleague mentioned the example of current Croatian president who is openly speaking that he has nothing against recognizing the independent Palestine. So how it looked like during 2024, there were many protests, there was a big amount of online propaganda, and there was extremist behavior. And yes, there were many actions by anti-Israel people on Croatian public universities. Most of them, or almost all, were related to faculties of humanities and social sciences. As an examples, we can highlight the example of Split mentioned by colleague Župančić, and also the example of Faculty of Humanities and Social Sciences in Zagreb. I will not mention the Split example and explain it because the colleague did it, so I will turn on the Zagreb example. Most of events in Croatia, which are pro-Palestine, happened on Faculty of Humanities and Social Sciences in Zagreb, and the originality of that faculty is that there is an organized group which calls itself Studentice za Palestinu. So the translation on English would be like female students for Palestine, but also members of that group are male and people who are not male or female. Pro-Palestine activities often had official support of Students' Council of Faculty of Humanities and Social Sciences, or in Croatian language Studentski zbor Filozofskog fakulteta Sveučilišta u Zagrebu, which is the main student body inside of faculty. Also, on that faculty, some professors supported Palestine publicly. For example, many professors from Department of Sociology wrote one letter for supporting Palestine, and it is publicly available on the web pages of the department. And also some student clubs on that faculty, for example, Club of Students of Anthropology, openly supported Palestine. Of course, there are also individuals who are not members of any club who are supporting Palestine for some of their reasons. All of these are openly and publicly anti-Israel in context of current war, and some of them are maybe anti-Zionist or anti-Semitic. Some of the events, like for example the book club about Palestine, which exists on Faculty of Humanities and Social Sciences, their events were organized inside of the building of faculty, inside of Club of Students of Faculty of Humanities and Social Sciences, or in Croatian Klub studenata Filozofskog fakulteta, which is known in short as KSFF. All of these activities, and there were also 2 protests in the space of faculty. All of these activities are part of political activities, mostly because they are demanding people to take sides. So I don't think it is science, because it doesn't call for any kind of dialogue. All of these activities, I would say, started in the first half of 2024 with different panels where guests were mostly publicly pro-Palestine orientated persons. Some of these panels were called Activism in Academic Community and Movement for Free Palestine. There were different guests, scholars who are publicly pro-Palestine. And one very interesting called War in Israel, Causes and Solutions, where guests were from one ideological organization, political organization with clear ideology, and this organization is called Marxist Organization Reds, or in Croatian language, Marksistička organizacija Crveni. That event was organized by a sociology student club, Diskrepancija. Is the name of the club. During the year, there was a lot of propaganda, for example, inside of the building of faculty. For example, posters with writings such as, "Instead of going on class, go on protest against the genocide in Gaza." So these people are using a lot of strong words, because strong words are publicly attractive, and people read something that has a lot of strong words, and I would say that genocide is the most common word that they are using on this kind of propaganda posters. Biggest anti-Israel group is Studentice za Palestinu, and they are very clear in their calling for stopping the cooperation with Israel, wanting faculty to openly stay against current policy of Israel in context of war, and they're wanting faculty to help students, refugees from Gaza. This group is publicly on social media promoting that Israel is doing genocide, and in their propaganda they are showing Palestine as occupied territory. Also, on Faculty of Humanities and Social Sciences, there was example of students disrespecting Israel military, because they wrote on the wall, outside wall of faculty, one writing against a person working on faculty who was part of Israel army, and Studentice za Palestinu published that the person was part of violence against Palestine people. Even though they were calling people to come on protests for supporting Palestine outside and inside that faculty were not big, and it shows that the majority of academic community stands with the Croatian cooperation with Israel. And in the end, I would like to say something about 3 types of most common disinformation in Croatian society. So, I think that accusations against Israel of committing genocide are currently unfounded, because the ongoing war is a consequence of the events of October 7th, 2023, and events that happened that day. Therefore, it is a defensive war against the terrorist group Hamas, and according to UN definition, it is clear that genocide refers to the physical destruction or partial destruction of a group based on identity, and this is not the goal of Israel in the Gaza Strip, where the war is happening. Also, certain human reactions by the Israel military refute disinformation about genocide or such intentions. For example, the Israel military sent certain warnings before the attack, called for the temporary evacuation of the population, and increasingly provided humanitarian corridors and operations. Also, as for the claims about Israel as a colonial power, it is disinformation that Israel is colonial power, because in the territory of Israel, Jews are an indigenous population, that has had a historical continuity of residence in that area since before Christ. This area has often changed owners throughout history, and as a state, Israel was formed after the World War II, as we know. But although national consciousness as a basic component of the concept of nation emerged during the 19th century, according to the rules of our historical science, it is relevant to talk about the concept of statehood or continuity of state law that is drawn from pre-modern times. So it is enough to recall, for example, the original foundations of the Croatian constitution, which refer to the distant Middle Ages and Croatian kingdom from the Middle Ages. There have been attempts to form two states, as we know, Israeli and Arab, but Arab and Palestinian politicians have rejected such solution. And today, many Arabs have become citizens of Israel, and although tensions between Jews and Arabs in Israel sometimes arise, state policy does not seek a solution through violence against Arabs. Moreover, Arab political parties are active in Israel, and I don't think that any colonial power would act this way. So, as we know, Israel is not a colonial power, and these were some evidences for that. And at the end, I would like to say something about the slogan, popular slogan, "From the river to the sea, Palestine will be free," which is very known among anti-Israel groups. And it has anti-Semitic content because it means the destruction and abolition of the Jewish state, thus calling for the deprivation of the rights of the Jewish people. It should be noted that this slogan does not intend regime change or secession, but implies the complete destruction of a state and its institutions. And as a Center for Public Policy and Economic Analysis, we wrote a lot about this, and we will write a lot about this in future.
Thank you. Right now we have time for questions and comments from the audience, so we can create some discussions with you from the audience and our guests. So raise your hand if you want to ask something, to comment some. Yes.
Hello. I don't know how to turn myself. I can sit down. Okay. No, it's difficult to stand. My name is Andrea Feldman, and I'm a historian and a feminist of the second generation. I belong to a generation of feminists who started to speak about domestic violence issues and rape issues way back in the 80s. That was at the time of Yugoslavia, the country that tried to persuade everybody how they dealt with the Jewish, but also women's questions. And as such, I'm disgusted by the silence of so-called feminists, be it activists and theoreticians, and their refusal to condemn outright violent sex crimes and indeed war crimes on and since October 7th, 2023. I also regard this issue as a very important one that wasn't really discussed much in our media or in public in general. As someone who was a witness during the 90s as an interpreter for Yale psychiatric program, which was designed by Professor Dori Laub, himself a Holocaust survivor, and he was a Yale Medical School faculty, who conducted a series of interviews with the survivors of war in Bosnia and Herzegovina, and whose traumatic experience included the intentional sexual violence perpetrated by the Serbian paramilitary and military forces from Croatia and Bosnia and Herzegovina as a part of the war effort. It took really a very long time and lots of energy and a lot of persuasion to basically include and recognize the sexual offenses during the war time as legitimate war crimes by the international courts of human rights. So it is really very unclear to me how come that there is a general reluctance of feminist organizations and other human rights organizations in Croatia as well transnationally to acknowledge and condemn the systematic abuse of women, children, and indeed men during and in the aftermath of the Hamas terrorist attack of October 7th. I see this failure to treat sexual violence, abuse, and rape with the same anger and disgust as one would treat them at home, in our own countries, as part of intentional power game played by the left in the media, academia, politics, and civil society against the sheer existence of the State of Israel. Almost a year ago, there was an article entitled "The Silence of the Feminists," which was written by Barry Weiss of the Free Press, which is an independent media company, compared no reaction regarding Hamas abducted women, hostages, with a similar event from Nigeria in 2014, when Boko Haram, a self-proclaimed jihadist terrorist organization, abducted 276 girls. "Bring back our girls," cried at the time feminist celebrities from the likes of Michelle Obama or Malala, Oprah, and Angelina Jolie. No such outcry happened when Hamas brutalized men, women, and children in Israel. I'm not going to repeat some of the things that we heard today. I'm just going to say that I haven't really noticed any response of Croatian organizations, feminist and human rights, which usually debate these things in public. I just feel the need to speak up against this terrible injustice and cowardice of feminists and their collaborators. At the moment in which I'm thrilled that 3 women hostages have been released from 407 days of imprisonment, one has to proceed with more than cautious optimism. The times of war are difficult for a reason. We do not know when or if this war will end. It was also interesting to note, if I remember correctly, my Marxist classes from the 80s, it was no other than Karl Marx who admittedly said that when 2 rights meet in a conflict, the force prevails. But the times of war are also the times of a test, a moral test, that in the West in particular, as well as in my own country, many have failed. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other questions or comments from the audience? There.
Hi, so I'm Vladimira Šimić. Some of you know me. I'm office manager of Rabepine Zaklas, but actually why I want to talk now or to, let's say, ask question and to comment is because for more than 20 years I'm health journalist. For 10 years I'm editing health portal Adiva HR. And when I was invited here and when I saw that the topic is disinformation about Israel, I was hoping also to see someone from IT sector and that it will be a word about disinformation, misinformation, and malinformations. And we had actually excellent case study with coronavirus. At that time, I must say that I was in fear. I stopped with public. I could talk a lot about Corona time and how to edit web page during Corona time. Thank God we are owned by pharma industry, so we do not depend about clicks and everything. But when it's the story about disinformation and Israel, it should be worried about how disinformations are functioning, who is spreading, how all of you are very educated. You are talking great about history, and I love to listen to you and read your articles and everything. But we have to remind ourselves that we are living in 21st centuries and that people mostly are not reading. Why social medias are so popular? Because they are reading news on Facebook. They are not reading news in, we know in Croatia that Vjesnik disappeared. That was the last media in Croatia that was really for those who wanted to read and to think and everything. Nowadays people are not reading. And how to explain them history of Jews, history of Israel in social media. And so there is a big problem. Now that would be really long story and I don't want to take your time. How disinformation are functioning and what are effects of disinformations during Corona time. Was a lot of dead people, not because of coronavirus, but because of beautiful advices that they could read on social media. Actually, the biggest number of dead because of disinformation was in Iran. Anyway, understanding of that field and technique, especially about bots, about algorithms, about psychology, and actually about those who are spreading, I don't know, you have one of the goals of disinformation is to create false memories. And that's what they're doing now. So we had with anti-Semitism, we know we who are Jewish, who have Jewish families and who died in Holocaust, we knew that sooner or later anti-Semitism will go again up. It's happening in history for thousands of years. We can discuss why, it doesn't matter. But now we are in 21st century and we have a big problem that that mess of the people and technology that is spreading. And so actually now I'm losing a little bit. I'm sorry I didn't prepare myself for a speech. I can send you if you wish in this center presentation that I did about coronavirus. My topic, I spoke on faculty, I didn't say so, I was called on Faculty of Medicine to talk about pandemic and about coronavirus, how it became a news and what were consequences. Now, I didn't prepare myself, but my question is actually, is Israel, I don't know how much you're allowed to talk about it, but is there strategy that is, I know that Israel have bought farms that it's fighting also on digital level. So how is it organized? Now as Minister of Communication in Croatia, I didn't have, so how this technology, Israel is a startup nation, it's very strong in technology. So how actually this is functioning? Is there any strategy fighting that is fighting about disinformation, because this is disaster? Israel actually lost, I think that there was one nice title, if Hitler would have social media, he would won the war. Israel actually lost the war on social media. So we have to rebrand, to do rebranding, re-imaging. It's a lot of online job with people who are not reading. Thank you.
Yeah, well, it's good that you mentioned COVID, because it's also something Igor Rudon mentioned as a fresh example, relatively. The general public in in the West, forget about, underdeveloped countries, was extremely confused with people criticizing the vaccination campaigns and offering some miraculous treatments. And you are right, there are cases that people died because they didn't know what the truth is, okay? I think it still exists, by the way, this campaign. I wanted to, if the time will allow later, I'll ask the moderator to make some summary about the whole issue, some insights regarding the left motivation of the left to join this train, okay, of anti-Zionism. Definitely we have an issue. I'll be short, not because I can't say few things, but because it's a very uphill battle, okay? We were fighting, first of all, the military campaign, okay? It will continue as much as needed when it comes to Gaza and the West Bank. We had some successes, elimination of the leaders of Hamas, of Hezbollah. You know the story, I will not go into details. Strategically, we are successful in renewing the deterrence. And if you ask military experts in the West, they will tell you, despite the surprise and the failure, tremendous failure of Israel on 7th of October, we are doing quite nice right now. Of course, we have the issue and commitment to bring back all the hostages. Preferably all of them alive, but we know the sad, painful truth that probably maybe 50% of them will be at least brought back to be buried by their families. Then there is a political warfare that I mentioned a few times in UN and otherwise. Then there is a legal warfare by countries like South Africa and others, ICC, ICJ. We will see what Americans will do about it. There are all these strong statements by the new administration regarding sanctions on ICC, okay? And this is very tragic because the idea maybe was good when ICC was created. You have your own experience with the tribunal. Maybe it skews your positions as well, we understand it. You have to respect the tribunal, so you have to respect now the ICC, unfortunately, really unfortunately. And then there is the information campaign. It got the lesser attention, lesser budgets, or lesser, let's say, resources. I'm not speaking about cyber and bots and everything. That's something else. We know more or less who are the major villains. One of them is Al Jazeera, because Al Jazeera enjoys legitimacy and it's very powerful. It's billions of US dollars. No one would like to offend Al Jazeera, including our Western friends. There is too much on the stake. And Al Jazeera, the impact of Al Jazeera, and don't expect us to create, like in protocols of the Elders of Zion, a Jewish world network of media. I mean, we are accused anyhow that we are controlling the media. So if we are controlling the media, why we do it so miserable? Go explain it to our leftist friends. We deducted few deductions. We are doing few things. And God knows how it, if I may, just to follow on that, one of the topics, one of the challenges is usually called the silent majority, okay? The students that were harassing your panel or lecture, whatever.
Not harassing, just asking.
Yeah, they are minority, but well-organized minority. Most of the people don't have time, don't have patience, they're not so involved emotionally. They don't have like prejudices. People, living their everyday life, who cares about the Jews and the Palestinians? You have your own legacy of painful war and everything. That's in case of Croatia. We understand it. But sometimes, like it happened many times in human history, this is the price for being silent. And one day you wake up and it's at your door, because the other side, active. Whether they were Nazis or Bolsheviks. Okay? European left is in distress. Is distressed because they have nothing to sell. Everyone supports green agenda. Who more, who left. Sorry, who more, who less. There isn't working class. Who is the working class? The migrants. Look what happened in European elections. Who won? Okay, it's the right. Those are the real concerns of the people. So the left has to reinvent itself with new agenda item. And the easiest one is the Palestinian, because it's far away, but we can be as supportive, as solidar as possible. And then it joins the old anti-Semitic prejudices, and voila. Our major concern, you touched this very narrowly, is the slippery slope to violence. It happens in Canada, synagogues, not State of Israel, not Israeli embassies necessary. We were attacked. There were grenades thrown Israeli embassy somewhere in Europe. Okay, there were shootings. Okay, but Jewish institutions were attacked in the West, in Australia recently. Slovenia, I still don't know whether it's really radical right or it's provocation by radical left. I'm not sure, I'm not expert in Slovenia. Synagogue in Maribor, oldest synagogue with anti-Semitic graffiti just last week. Okay, and Montreal and Melbourne, some other places, Pittsburgh with deadly attack a few years ago. So yeah, sometimes it comes from very radical supremacists in the US, Ku Klux Klan, and people like that as well. But unfortunately, the biggest challenge right now that, it's a betrayal of the left. In Israel, it's considered to be a really betrayal. State of Israel was established by socialists, by the way. And that's something, if no one speaks here, like in case of Split, it's not only here, it's all over Europe. There was a good statement made this morning, I think, or it was published today, by Chancellor Schulz in Germany. Okay, big warning. He understands what's happening in his country, understands what's happening in Europe. Not everything is connected to Israel and Palestinians, but sometimes it's very convenient to drag Palestinians and the Jews, and as I mentioned to you, the bots, state bots, who can magnify this issue, who can make it much more acute, and the slippery slope normally, especially of the people with commitment for activism, can cross the red lines, okay? That's our concern. And last thing, there is a term of defending democracy. There is freedom of speech. Yeah, it should be respected. There are fakes on the internet. It's a reality that should be fought. It's uphill because, let's say, European Union last year, I think, adopted DSA. Okay, how it's called, digital Services Act. Digital Services Act should actually put a responsibility on suppliers, on providers, okay, all the major guys, and not only TikTok, also Facebook and ex-Twitter and everything, to prevent different dangerous phenomena on social networks. Who can do it if not them? And there is even fines, 6 to 7% of their turnover to be paid if they are not doing it. On the other hand, you have the statement of Zuckerberg just 10 days ago that he is raising his hands. So it's a heavy uphill battle. We are not sure that we'll be successful. But if democracies will not protect themselves, defend themselves from the fringe organizations, whether from the left or from the right, center will suffer. The stability of the West will suffer. And unfortunately, we know from our experience, not our, speaking about Western civilization, young people are easily manipulated and easily. You need a good lecturer, a good professor to become a guru, and not always a positive guru. Okay? So normally the hot bases, the hot houses are in academy. It's painful to hear about it, but people coming to study, to learn, and as you are saying, they sometimes coming out with dangerous ideas because they don't like the situation, they want to change. You know, it's common to all young people, they want to change, they want to introduce some change. But sometimes they can cross the lines. And yeah, I'm realist, I'm not pessimist. We know how to protect ourselves. We couldn't care less what UN is saying about State of Israel. There are dozens of resolutions. And you are right, UN Women, the only agency who covers the topics that you were speaking about, was silent. So what we can expect of UN? What can you expect of UNRWA, the main humanitarian organization who support to help Palestinians when the schools under UNRWA responsibility teaching for hate and destruction of Israel? And no one cares about it. And the infrastructure of UNRWA is used by Hamas to store weapons, to store database, information databases. So no one will teach us what to do and how to do, but we are still democracy. We still would like to live in peace with our neighbors. We will see how it will go.
Thank you. Thank you. Since we are beginning to be run of time, I will just briefly summarize the main points. So we have a mixture of concrete geopolitical influences that are easily detected. Also, so-called longue durée of ideas and theories in academia. The particular situation in Israel cannot be isolated from the anti-Western narratives in academia specifically. Also, a very interesting insight from the perspective of social media and PR in the broader sense. And also, as an intellectual historian, I must say, the great factor is the crisis of Marxism, because it was going through a lot of revisions from Marx's death, because revolution just won't come, and it won't come, and there is no revolution. I was very interested to hear the closing remarks of His Excellency, so I will conclude this forum with one quote. The quote is from, I humbly think, one of the greatest intellectuals of the 20th century, Nobel laureate Friedrich von Hayek, who wasn't silent in the time of crisis, in the time of right-wing and left-wing totalitarianism. He said, I quote or paraphrase him if I'm not right. He said, "We must make the building of a free society once more an intellectual adventure, a deed of courage." Thank you very much.